dad used to sing me the song when I was just 2 months old. Der Eisbär, der kleine Eisbär, der Eisbär, der hat kein Eis mehr. Warum nur hat der Eisbär kein Eis mehr, weißt du das? Der Eisbär, der hat kein Eis mehr, weil es Klimawandel gibt. Nun läuft der kleine Eisbär durch ein Sandmeer, das ist schade. The rough English translation of this song is basically saying that there's a small polar bear who doesn't have any ice left due to climate change and now has to walk through a desert. And this is becoming reality right this second. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. To talk to you about doing something about doing nothing. Because to be frank, I am terrified of the current situation of our planet. I am truly scared. But when I started researching and learning more and more about the effects and the impacts of our climate change, I realized that we've known about this issue far longer than my dad has sang this song to me. So why do I still have to be scared? Why are still millions of children's futures at risk? Because we've done nothing. Generations before mine have lived in ignorance of what is happening to our planet and even continued the destructions of our ecosystem. And now my generation, the one that will experience a climate meltdown, will have to take measures into their own hands and try to change what should have been sung about years ago. But let's start with the basics. I am no climate scientist or expert, but it is common knowledge that the Earth's greenhouse gas effect is the main contributor to global warming and temperature changes. Emitting gases into our atmosphere, such as CO2 or methane gas, have caused our Earth's temperatures to rise. NASA has recorded CO2 levels in our atmosphere ever since the beginning of time. And as you can see, they have been fluctuating. But only ever since the 1950s have they really skyrocketed. And that these numbers have a strong correlation to the global temperature increases has been known for over 100 years. More specifically, in the 1860s, when physicist John Tidnall discovered the Earth's greenhouse gas effect, where he also added the strong impacts a small change in the composition of our atmosphere could have on our planet. Additionally to that, a Swedish scientist in 1896 added that if too much CO2 enters our atmosphere, our Earth's surface temperatures could be significantly altered. And if we put one and one together, we can evidently see that the rising CO2 levels, next to the evidence that too much CO2 in our atmosphere causes our Earth to warm up, then we can see the change and we know why it's happening. But these changes don't stimulate everyone's minds. Climate change deniers are still at large and even hold powerful positions in our world of politics today. The common argument to deny a change in climate, or at least remove the responsibility away from oneself, is to say that's not human-made. It's just a natural process. What if the sun just decided to get a little hotter today? Well, I got it covered. NASA has also recorded solar irradiance next to global temperature increases for the past 100 years or so. What this basically means is the heat energy gained from the sun compared to temperature increases. As you can evidently see by the yellow line, solar irradiance has been fluctuating, yes, but it has not gone up, whereas temperatures have increased steeply. Another counter-argument is simply that these numbers are so rapidly changing. If you look at this graph as well as the graph before, even to the uneducated eye, the slopes look unnatural. The National Research Council of the United States found the current global warming to be 10 times faster than in the ancient pre-human climate. The last 50 years of humanity have caused our planet to warm and change, as it was found by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which found that with more than 95% certainty that this was the case. But even if it all does turn out to be a gigantic hoax, what is so bad about preserving our Earth's stable environment far longer than we have reserves of oil and coal? Some might say that it would be a waste of money. But if you compare the amount of money needed to switch to renewable energies, compared when 50% of the world is uninhabitable, I'd say we bet on the 95% and restore our Earth for the future. The question also is, what do these effects do to our planet? What are the effects? Well, they've been studied for a long time and are quite clear. One thing that will evidently happen is the increase in extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, or even hurricanes, which will destroy large parts of human habitat and ecosystems. Additionally to that, the polar ice caps will melt and rising sea levels will flood coastal regions on all continents. These things combined will create extreme food and water shortages, which will spark conflict all across the globe, as well as migration waves. But perhaps the scariest of all, at least to me, is the melting of the permafrost grounds. These grounds have been frozen for over 1 million years and hold biodegradable soil. If a temperature increase is reached so that these grounds start to melt, the grounds in them will start to biodegrade and emit an amount of gas far beyond anything that we as humanity could ever emit in the same amount of time. The issue with all of these things is something called a tipping point. This is best explained with the example of coral reef bleaching. A tipping point is when a temperature increase is reached so that the change in the ecosystem is non-reversible. So if we take coral reef bleaching, if a tipping point in this ecosystem is reached, the coral reefs will never go back to its original color and original duty and function. The problem is that all of these different ecosystems have different tipping points. That's what makes it so hard to see when all of these effects will take place and when we will have ecosystem collapse, such as the coral reefs and the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Now that you know all of this, well, I realize that we've only started actually acting on when we see these things. It's when we see them with our own eyes, not just hear them. But these effects might come far sooner than you actually think. I also brought you the UNEP Emissions Gap Report of 2019. They evaluate the amount of CO2 we are emitting compared to the amount of CO2 we need to be emitting to reach our temperature goals. I hope all of you have heard of the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015, where the global temperature increase was set to 1.5 degree limit. But if we go by a current policy, we will go far beyond a 4-degree increase, where we have many tipping points be reached. And even if we reduce our current global emissions, which are around 54 global gigatons per year, to around 41 gigatons per year in just 10 years, we will still reach a temperature increase of 2 degrees. We need to reduce our global emissions by 32 gigatons of CO2 per year to reach our temperature limit goal of 1.5 degrees. Well, now that you know all of this, you might seriously wonder why we haven't done anything. If a change in climate is so soon, why haven't we done everything in our power to save ourselves? Well, that's my question too. The main issue is that taking these things into consideration and trying to reach these goals requires all of us to completely change all our daily habits, especially in the industrialized world. But we're comfortable creatures, and that's why I also understand why past generations haven't really done enough towards this issue. Because we don't like to make ourselves uncomfortable. Because, well, it makes us uncomfortable. 50 years ago, the way to save the world was to throw your trash in a trash can and not on the street. 30 years ago, people were told to recycle that trash. And then 15 years ago, people were told to ride their bikes more. Well, today we're at a point where all of these things seem close to irrelevant to do them because the issue has become so large and the impact so small of the individual. A friend once told me that they find it somewhat irrelevant to do things such as recycling or eating less meat because as an individual person, the impact seems really small. And I partially agree with them. Because politicians are the only ones that can truly change something anymore. They need to decide things such as shutting off coal power plants or reducing the amount of money given to the automobile industry and instead reducing the cost of electric cars. But we live in a democratic country. We are the voters of our future leaders. If we're big enough of a group to be heard, politicians have no other choice but to listen. Fridays for Future is a youth-led demonstration against climate change and for more political action from the government. They're doing exactly what I just mentioned. Greta Thunberg, the founder of the movement, gave my generation the voice we need to fight for our future. She was able to start an outcry from young people all across the world demanding action. And the impacts can already be seen, such as in Germany deciding that by 2035 they want to shut off all coal power plants. The impact can also be seen by the rising popularity of the Green Party in Germany, who are estimated to get around 30% pre-COVID-19 in the 2021 elections. But even if you're not that political, if you don't want to join political debates, I truly believe that changing your own daily habits can have an impact. 1.5 years ago, I decided to become a pescatarian. What this means is that I only consume fish and no other meats. I did this purely for climate, because 1 kilogram of beef emits the same amount of CO2 such as burning 6 liters of petrol, around 13 kilograms of CO2. This includes things like cutting off our natural rainforest, refrigerating and transporting the food we eat, only that we can eat that slice of salami on our toast in the morning. The average European eats around 80 to 100 kilograms of meat per year. We'll take 100 kilograms for simplicity's sake for all the math we're gonna do. If, assuming we're around 100 people in this room tonight, everyone here reduces their amount of meat consumption to once a week before having consumed it almost every day, we alone here in this room tonight would save up to 800,000 kilograms of CO2 in just 1 year. And the impact also starts with you being a role model. If you change yourselves, others around you will notice. Many of my friends in the past year have decided to go vegetarian. Maybe not just because of me, but I might have at least given them the idea to do so. And you've already started making the first change. You've come here and listened to me and started to become aware of the issue we're facing. You've started learning more and more, or have hopefully learned something new. Because that's the first step towards making a change in yourself. To make that simpler, I've made you a list of things that you can do to start to change your own daily habits towards a better future and to become more carbon friendly. My first step is to eat less meat. It doesn't mean you have to go completely vegetarian or even vegan. You can reduce your meat consumption to maybe once or twice a week, which, as I said before, already has a large impact. Secondly, consuming less fast fashion. Fast fashion requires so much waste, water and CO2 to be emitted just for the clothes you wear. Instead, you can buy secondhand clothing or even ask your grandparents if they have old clothes lying around, because these are really in trend right now as well. My third tip is to reduce the use of cars and planes. Maybe take the bike to school or to work. And if you live too far away, take public transport. It's not that hard. And reducing your use of planes is essentially important. Take the train to go to Madrid. That might take a lot longer, but the train ride is worth it. And then my fourth tip is the thing I mentioned about becoming aware. Researching your carbon footprint, which is basically the amount of CO2 you emit per year as an individual, will help you to become aware of what you're doing, all the things you're putting out there and how much CO2 you're emitting. Where from that information you can now start to change and see where you can work on. And then my last tip is maybe considering switching to renewable energies. That includes things like switching to renewable energies to heat your houses, or driving an electric car, or even lighting the light bulbs in your houses with renewable energy. Because that's a way forward, and that's what we need. We might not have the ability to stop global warming, but we have the ability to create a world that can face and conquer the challenges that lie before us. I cannot force you to start making your life more sustainable. I cannot ban meat or plastic from your life, but I can at least try to convince you to take these things that I mentioned today into consideration when going through your week. And that's why I don't feel so bad for talking so much about our climate and the future, Because our voice is the biggest weapon we have, and we need to start using it towards making a change. Because today, a young 17-year-old girl was given the chance to voice how terrified she is of the future, and how truly frustrated she is with people doing nothing. Because we are the future, so we better start acting so there is one for us. Thank you.